Hello everyone, this is Dr. K. Jagannayaki, Associate Professor, MBA Department, Institute of Aeronautical Engineering, Dundigal. So today I want to discuss about the validity and reliability in measurement. So in previous lecture I discussed about what is the necessity or importance of using various measurement of scales. So that is useful to identify what are the various types of measurement of scale, and whereas coming to this particular topic, validity and reliability in measurement of scales, we have to use the accurate and reliable data to analyze the research data. So that is very important. So to understand what are the different types of validities and how to find the reliable data by using different types of methods. So if you consider any type of research study, so that research, it should be accurate. So whatever data we are going to use, it depends upon what type of scale you are going to use in the research study. So that is the reason most of the researchers, they developed some criteria to develop a sound and error-free measurements. So when we can say accurate data, so after data collection, after organizing the data, we need to categorize the data into relevant and irrelevant. Only relevant data we have to consider to analyze the research study, and irrelevant data we have to omit. So for a clear understanding of the accuracy of measurement, so we have to apply a true score model. So the equation x naught is equal to xt plus xs plus xr, where x naught, it represents the observed score or measurement, xt the true score of the attribute. So whatever quality or characteristic we are going to study, so what is the true score of that attribute, and that should be defined in terms of xt. And xs, is there any systematic error occur in the data analysis at the time of collecting the data by using various data sources, and is there any random error? So all these things we need to consider, and basing on that we can find whether the given data is accurate or not. So the above addition model, it represents the observed score as the sum of the true value of the characteristics of and the two errors. So one is you are going to consider what is the true score of the attribute under study, and other two errors, one is systematic error, another one is random error. So an ideal measurement must have both the systematic error and random error. Both should be 0. So in that way, if you are going to consider, it means that observed frequency or observed score of the measurement is 0, and the systematic error should be 0, as well as the random error should also be 0, so that the observed score, it represents true score completely. So that is x naught is equal to xt. So in reality, it may not be possible. Why? Because maybe in case of at the time of selection of a sample, instead of using one sampling technique, if you are going to use another, it leads to systematic error, and improper use of data sources, that leads to errors. So it depends. So that is the reason in real life situation, having error free in case of systematic error and random error, it never be equals to 0. So based on the above model of testing a good measurement, it depends upon purely the reliability and validity of data. So first one is reliability. See, what do you mean by reliability? Reliability means up to what extent the measurement, whatever you are going to take, they are free from the random error. So if XR is equal to 0, the measurement is perfectly reliable. A reliable measurement is consistent and it is free from random fluctuations. So random fluctuations means all of a sudden, unknowingly if something happens, so the error that causes due to random fluctuations, natural calamities, famine, earthquakes, so everything that would show its impact on the business organizations. So we used to say that so it may not be under the control of the decision maker because no one can predict well in advance about the natural calamities and other things. So that is the reason they are beyond the control of the decision maker. So random errors in reality cannot be eliminated. So only theoretical aspect, whenever we find random error is equal to 0, then we used to say whatever measurement you are going to use, that is the perfect reliable measure. So reliability is a property. It gives same results when repeated measurements are made under constant conditions. So that is the reason if you are going to repeat the measurements again and again, so we used to have consistency among the data. So whatever experiments you are going to perform, that should be under constant conditions. For example, with a reliable instrument, a respondent would give same answer to a question. If he is asked by 2 or 3 interviewers or at 2 different occasions, so we used to get the same answer. So in developing good measurements, we have 3 methods to assess the reliability of measurement. So basing on these 3 methods, we can able to identify the reliability of measurement up to what extent the measurement is free from random error. So the first method is test, retest method. Second one, alternative form method. Third one, split half method. So using any of the methods, we can assess the reliability of the data. The first method is test retest method. So since reliability by definition it means consistency. In simple terms, if you want to understand reliability means there should be consistency among the data. So whatever you are saying, it should be reliable, which have a meaningful information. So it is proper to assess reliability by repeating the measurement. So as you are going to repeat the same type of thing again and again, if you are going to get the similar or same answers, then that is known as reliability. So in this method, respondents they asked identical set of questions. So they will give a scale item at 2 different time points or by 2 interviewers, and the degree of similarity between the 2 measurements is determined. So whether you are going to respond in the same way or else is there any difference, so that should be measurable in terms of test and retest method to understand the reliability of the measurement. So this technique it applies the same scale items to same population twice and the results so obtained they are compared. So the time between 2 repetitions must not be too long, otherwise it will affect this method. So you are going to conduct the same type of survey by 2 different interviewers or by two different locations, and you need to focus the same sample which is taken under the study, same respondents we need to interact. Then we used to compare whatever the answers or responses given by the same sample group or target group in two different locations by two different interviewers. But the condition is that the two repetitions, whatever you are going to use, it should not have long gap between the two experiments. So that method is known as test retest method. So that how we used to identify the consistency of the people responses, whatever data they provided, whether it is reliable or not. And second method is alternative form method. In this method, two equivalent forms of scales they have constructed and are applied on the same population at two different times with a different form being used each time. So here also you are going to repeat the same, but instead of using one form, here we are going to use another form of survey. The degree of similarity in the two results will be determined the reliability of the measurement of scale. So whatever form you are going to apply, whether we should get the same consistent answers from the respondents or not, basing on that we used to determine whatever data we have collected from the respondents, whether it is reliable or not. This method is known as alternative form of method. Whereas in first case, you are not going to change the form of method. The same method we used to conduct at different intervals, at different locations by different people. The third type of method is known as split half method. So in this method, the total scale of items they are divided into two equal halves. For example, if you want to consider even and odd number, and the two sets of scales we used to administer separately. Even numbers one scale, odd numbers another scale. So then a correlation coefficient between the two groups is obtained. A high positive correlation it indicates the measurement is reliable. Low correlation it indicates negative correlation is not reliable measurement. So like how we used to test the consistency of the measurement or reliability of measurement, it should be measured with the help of three methods. One is test retest method, second one alternate form method, and third one is split off method. The next one is validity. See, validity of a scale, it tells us up to what extent the differences in observed scale scores reflect the true difference among objects and the characteristics being measured rather than systematic or random error. So either you may have the errors, whether it may be related to the system or it may be due to random fluctuations. Just we want to find out what type of difference between the observed scale scores and the generated scores, true scores of the characteristics. That should be measured, the degree up to what extent the difference in observed score it reflects the true score of the attribute that is being measured rather than systematic and random error, that is known as validity. Then what do you mean by perfect validity? See, no measurement error. So x naught is equal to xt. Like reliability, here also there should not be any error. Then the data is said to be a perfect validity measurement. So a measurement is said to be valid if it measures correctly what it is supposed to measure. So if one can able to understand what to measure, then accordingly he used to select the type of measurement of scale. So, to determine the validity of an instrument, its result should be compared with other relevant evidences. So, whatever characteristic you are going to study, so we apart from the results, whatever we obtain, that should be compared with other evidences, whatever available for the particular characteristics. So, basing on that, we used to categorize validity into four tabs: phase validity, content validity, criteria validity, and construct validity. The first one is phase validity. So it is one of the easiest validation procedure is phase validity. So a researcher he can able to assess the phase validity by examining and determine whether the measurement arrives at the concept adequately. For example, if an investor is interested in measuring the casteism in the people, then he should check the statement given in his questionnaire. So, up to what extent they relate to casteism. So, everything we should clearly mention in the questionnaire. So, basing on that, we used to collect the information from the target group of respondents. Then second one is content validity. It refers to the adequacy and relevance of the contents that are specified in a questionnaire. So the contents, whatever we use in the study, that should provide adequate coverage of items. See, if you want to collect accurate information that is related to the study, and we need to specify the questions accordingly in the questionnaire so that it reflects what is supposed to be measured. So, if you have that sense, what exactly you want and from whom you have to get the data and how you are going to utilize the data, then only we can able to assess the data in a most appropriate manner. So, for example, in an intelligence test, the investigator should check if the questions the test really judge the intelligence of a person. So, if most of the questions the test relate to arithmetic calculations, it is only testing mathematical ability. And if most questions are on general knowledge, so it is used to test the memory. So it is a memory rather than intelligent test. So that is the reason one should clearly specify what you are supposed to measure. Basing on that, we need to specify the questions accordingly. If you are going to conduct any sort of survey, an investigator should consult a panel of senior and experienced researchers if his measurement truly measured the concept under study. So, whatever concept you are going to specify, so whether it is relevant or irrelevant, whether it is a valid study, and is it possible to cover all the aspects. So, everything we need to consult a panel of senior and experienced persons who are having expertise knowledge in the relevant field. So that's how we used to develop validity, or you can able to determine a valid measurement with the help of content. The next one is criteria validity. So it is based on multiple measurement of the same concept. So people generally they used to adapt different types of criteria, the methods what we used to talk about. So it's not necessary that there should be only one single method. There will be multiple methods through which people can have use different types of methods to understand an instrument, whether it is a reliable data or not, along with an independent external measure. So, for example, if you take correlation coefficient, so one can use the correlation coefficient by using different methods like Carl Pearson's method, even Some people they may use Spearman's rank correlation, and some people may depends on concurrent deviation method. It differs. The correlation coefficient is calculated between these two sets of scores on the same population, whatever may be the method, but used to get the same solution. So this correlation coefficient is called validity coefficient, which gives the criteria validity of measurement. So the same case, if you consider an intelligent test, the scores of the test may be compared with the university result of the student, and the correlation may be found between the two. So individual person's intelligence level, IQ also, if you want to test, it may vary from person to person. So all these things, it depends upon the criteria, what type of criteria you are going to follow in order to test the validity of the measurement. So criteria validity, it is also known as predictive validity, concurrent validity, or pragmatic validity. The next one is construct validity. So this type of validity is defined as the extent to which a measure matches in its result. So how you are going to match the results with the theoretical logic of the concepts. See, how do you match both theory as well as practical? There will be a lot of difference. There should be some relation through which we can construct validity between the theoretical logic about the concept, whatever concept you are going to study. It is the most complex and abstract type of validity. It involves the correlation between the measuring instrument and a general theoretical framework. So, in general, if you want to find a solution to a problem, initially we need to establish a relationship, mathematical relationship between the variables under study. So we used to compare the model with the theoretical framework. Whatever concept you are going to study, whether it is relevant with the instrument, whatever you are going to use to analyze the data. For example, if you take to study the use of shampoo among various economic classes, to make a theoretical proposition that higher the economic class, greater the use of shampoo. If the measuring instrument shows a high degree of agreement in its observations to this proposition, it is said to possess construct validity. So whatever proposition or assumption you have taken, if the model can able to support that proposition, then that type of validity is known as construct validity. And what is the relationship between reliability and validity? So reliability test consistency and uniformity in a measurement, whereas validity depends on the correctness of a measurement. So it tells us whatever measurement you are going to use in the research, whether it is correct or not, whether you are going in a right direction or not. So reliability is achieved by removing random errors, whereas validity is achieved by removing both random as well as systematic error. So there are 4 points that clarify the relationship between reliability and validity. The first one is a perfect validity. It implies perfect reliability. So in this case, the observed score is equal to the characteristic of an attribute, and where random error and systematic error always 0, then that type of validity is said to be perfect validity. A perfect validity means whatever measurement you are going to use in the data, that is perfect. So a perfect validity implies perfect reliability. If a measurement is unreliable, it cannot be perfectly valid, since at a minimum x0 is equal to xt plus xr. So there will always a random error in case of invalid or unreliable measurement. So thus unreliability implies invalidity. It's not a valid measurement. Why? Because there exists random error. Furthermore, systematic error may also be present. Thus, unreliability implies invalidity. If a measurement has perfect reliability, that is, random error is equal to 0, it may or may not have perfect validity because systematic errors may still be present. So it doesn't mean that in case of perfect reliability, only the absence of random error, but whereas the systematic error may or may not be there in case of reliable data. So that is the reason we never say perfect validity. It has a perfect reliable data. So thus reliability is a necessary but not sufficient condition for validity. Then coming to the technique of developing measurement tools, how we are going to develop a measurement tool. So tool is a device through which we can measure the things, objects and properties. So in case of qualitative research, objective measurements tools are very important. So that should be developed and they should be reliable and valid. So number of scales have been developed and used by social scientists. So basically we used to divide the measurement tools into two types. One is comparative scales, another one is non-comparative scales. So coming to comparative scales. So comparative scales are those measurement tools which gives a direct comparison of stimulus objects. So whatever objects we are going to study, we can easily compare these objects with each other. So that type of scales are known as comparative scales. The data so obtained from comparative scales, they should be interpreted in relative terms and also ordinal or rank order properties. So it includes all the scales like ordinal scale we can use in case of comparative scales and also rank order properties also we used to consider under comparative scales. So using these ordinal or rank order properties, we can also find the small differences between stimulus objects and they can be detected very easily. And coming to comparative scales, they are very easy to understand and easy to apply because it involves fewer theoretical concepts and the same known reference points for all respondents. So that is the reason we can easily compare these scales. And comparative scales are powerful measuring tools because they tend to reduce the halo or carryover effects from one judgment to another. So especially we used to apply this type of scales in case of the studies related to judgments and all. So there are three types of comparative scales. The first one is method of paired comparison, second method of rank order, third method of constant sum scale. So method of paired comparison, it is one of the most widely used comparative scaling techniques. So in this method, a respondent is presented with two objects and used to choose one among them according to some well-defined criteria. So if there are more than two objects, for example, if you take there are n brands of product, then the number of paid comparison required is capital N is equal to small n into n minus 1 by 2. So the data obtained by this technique are always ordinal in nature. Under this method, the assumption what we are going to follow is assumption of transitivity. It is possible to convert paired comparison data into rank order. So basing on that, we can able to analyze the data. The paired comparison scale can be used for a number of consumers and their preferences. Those preferences may be summed up to rank various brands. So if you have n 5 or 6 alternatives, so out of these 5 or 6 alternatives, we need to choose some of the brands, and for which brand you are giving the first priority and second, like that we used to rank the number of preferences. It depends on the customer or consumer's choices, and those ranks we used to sum up so that we can analyze the data using method of paired comparison. The next method is method of rank order. This is another method of comparative scaling where we used to apply again rank order scales. In this method, respondents are presented with several objects simultaneously, and we used to ask the respondents to rank them by following some criteria. For example, if you are going to ask a respondent about his preference about two brands or some soap brands from 1 to 5. So no two brands should receive the same rank. So out of 5 brands, so we have different types of soaps. So he used to assign some ranks basing on his preference. So for example, Lux you take, Liril, Pios, some other brand, Synthol, etc. like that. So if you observe that no brand will get the same number or same rank in case of method of rank order. So in rank order scaling, only n minus 1 scaling decisions are needed to be made for n brands. So whatever may be the brands. So out of 10 brands, if you are going to assign a particular brand as rank 1, so remaining they used to get n minus 1. Next highest 9. Then after that 8 like that. So on the other hand, in paired comparison, n into n minus 1 by 2 preferences are made. That may not be possible in case of method of rank order. Why? Because basing on our priority or preferences only we used to assign the ranks. So comparatively, the paired comparison method, rank order method is very easier and faster to get the result. So rank order scaling is also results in ordinal data. So whatever data you are going to consider here, that is related to ordinal scale of measurement. The next one is method of constant sum scaling. So in this method, a respondent is allocated a constant sum of units, let us take 100 points, to attribute of a product to reflect their importance. So when you are talking about the importance of a particular attribute, so some people will say it is unimportant. You are not going to consider the particular characteristic or quality. Then the respondent assigns 0 to 0 points. When if he specifies an attribute is twice as important to some other attributes, then it receives twice as many points. So the sum of all the points is equal to 100. Hence, this method also have the name constant sum scaling. So all the three, whatever we discussed previously, they fall under the category of comparative scales. And whereas here, non-comparative scale, so in this scaling, a respondent evaluates only one object at a time. So you cannot measure multiple objects. So there is an absolute evaluation of an item in this case and no comparative preferences are given. So as the name itself, it indicates that non-comparative scales. So comparison is not allowed in this type of methods. There is an absolute evaluation of an item. And we can also find the objects whether they relate to each other, if they have some relationship, up to what extent, what is the degree of that relation, we can able to measure with the help of non-comparative scales. So non-comparative scaling techniques consist of continuous and itemized rating scales. So continuous rating scale means the respondents rates the objects by placing a mark at the appropriate position on a line that runs from one extreme to another extreme. So these form of continuous scales, they may vary considerably. For example, if you take how will you rate this brand of soap? So we have three different forms. One can give the scale most preferable to least preferable. In case of second one, most preferable 100, it starts to least preferable 0 value. So in another case, most preferable 100, much preferable 75, neutral 0, less preferable 25, and least preferable 0. So it depends. So we can go with different types of rating with different intervals. The next type of scaling is itemized rating scaling. In itemized rating, the respondents they provided with a scale that has a number of brief description associated with each category. So in this case, we used to describe each scale by assigning some numbers. The categories are ordered in terms of scale position and they represent various shades of opinion or preferences. So it depends on your opinion and your preferences. Basing on that, we used to categorize and we used to describe each and every category that describe about the object. So the commonly used itemized rating scales are Likert scale and Thurston scales. Likert scale, if you take, this scale was developed by Likert and generally known as Likert technique or internal consistency scale. So it is one of the most popular and most widely used scale among the social science surveys which are used to measure the attitudes of various objects. So the Likert scale, it requires the respondents to indicate a degree of agreement or disagreement with each of the series or statements about stimulus object. The choice of the number of degree may vary from 3 to 7, but usually we used to consider 1 to 5. For example, if you want to measure is the quality is good of a particular product, so then we used to divide, apply the Likert scale like strongly agree, right? Agree, neutral, disagree, strongly disagree. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Like this we used to give rating on a scale. So some people use 3 to 7. So it depends on the nature of the study and type of measurement chosen for the study. For example, a respondent may be asked to express his opinion about the statement, India will be an information technology power in year 2020. Already we passed away the 2020. So we have given 5 options like strongly agree, agree, undecided, disagree and strongly disagree. So in that scale, if you take each opinion of some score points, for example, 1 to 5, for example, what is 1 represent strongly disagree and 5 strongly agree. So an analysis can be conducted on an item by item basis. So that is the reason it is known as profit analysis, and whatever score we determined using this particular method, that is known as summated score, and that can also be calculated in this method. The next type is Thurston Scale, and this scale was developed in 1920 in the USA by L. Thurston. According to this scale, a number of statements which are relevant to the study are given to a number of judges, and we ask them to order on a continuum from 1 to 11 to form the scale. So those judges, they used to decide the scale by taking into various factors into consideration, and these statements concerning the attitude to be measured that cover the favorable, unfavorable and neutral items. So each statement, it expresses one and only one unambiguous idea which is written on a separate paper or a slip. And the judges are asked to place each of these items in one of the 11 piles set from 1 to 11 categories. So for each and every category, so as per their opinion, they used to assign some value. For example, 1, it indicates the least favorable item, 2, favorable, 3, and so on. Whereas 11, it indicates most favorable. So an item can be placed in second category by judge 1 and ninth category by another. So why it happens so means the perceptions of the people may vary from one person to another person. Basing on that, they used to assign some value to measure a particular attribute. So if there is a significant difference between the assignments of categories for a statement, it is discarded completely. See, if this variation is too much, so they used to discard that particular category. So for other items accepted average scale value. So generally we used to consider median. So median, it always gives average, which is a positional value. So which is used to measure attributes, and that is calculated for each item, and the statements or whatever items under study with high average scale are then selected, and finally the instrument to be administered to the respondents. So these items are presented in random order to the respondents. So randomly they used to pick some of the items, and that should be presented in front of the respondents. So that scale is known as Thurston Scale. So after completion of this particular topic, we can able to understand how to construct scales and how to apply the appropriate comparative and non-comparative scales to make the data or the study a valid and reliable. Thank you.
Like, share and subscribe. Hit the bell icon for more updates.